Sign of the Moon is a bit of an unpopular book, if you weren't aware. It has a combination of the tribe presentation problems from the new prophecy in Power of Three, and an utter halting of the already limping plot for Moment of the Stars. When it first came out, it was a struggle for many fans to get through, and for those who weren't going to stop at the end of this arc, Sign of the Moon is where a lot of them stopped reading the series, either permanently or until A Vision of Shadows was coming out years later. Knowing that, I'm a bit apprehensive about returning to this one, because I'm sure it won't be good overall, but I'm sure there will be some good things to say. Take a breath, get a snack if you think you'll be bored, and let's get into this mess together. Sign of the Moon was released on April 5th of 2011, about 5 months after Night Whispers, and for the first time in a while, no supplemental material was released between these two main series entries. Unlike the past two Omen of the Stars entries, Sign of the Moon was written by Cherrykit Baldry, which may be a good thing, as she was also the one who became the most familiar with the tribe during her writing of 5 of the 6 books in the New Prophecy, along with the Ancients who would travel to become the tribe in Long Shadows. But, well, it's not an enviable position to be continuing either of those stories, considering how widely disliked they are. We'll just have to see how they were handled this time, and if there are any potential bright spots. First, though, we need a quick allegiance check-in. And I do mean quick, because there are few to no changes here. Nothing has changed in ThunderClan, and the only notable change in the other clans is Flametail's absence, as we saw his death at the end of the last book. The total speaking cast hasn't changed since Night Whispers either, managing an identical total of 101 cats, also with exactly 64% of the lines going to the top 10 in that cast. We do have a change in the gender divides, though, with 50% rather than 47% of the cast being she-cats, and them getting 46% rather than 47% of the lines. With that being said, though, let's get into this rather infamous book. The prologue opens with Stormfur, Brook, and their kits Lark and Pine in the tribe. The kits want to guard and hunt, which Brook tries to shut down as it's not tribe behavior, and Stormfur is quickly rebuked for focusing on borders again. Stoneteller says there will be no more border patrols, and is quickly pulled aside by Bird, who says he should have chosen a successor to train long ago. Stoneteller essentially says that he hasn't chosen one intentionally, because he doesn't want to see the tribe keep going and keep struggling over more generations. He promises Bird he'll listen to the tribe of Endless Hunting that night to look for signs, but as soon as she's gone, he instead curses them and says he'll never listen to their advice again, because he hates having taken on clan ways to survive. Back in the clans, Dovepaw and Ivypaw are having their warrior assessments, and each is being assessed by their mentor and one other warrior thanks to a new request from Firestar. Ivypaw apparently hasn't been talking to Dovepaw at all since she started spying for the 3, and she cries out in her dreams. Dovepaw is upset with Lionblaze for forcing her into this, but Lionblaze doesn't want to talk about this before her assessment. During the assessment, Icecloud falls into a tunnel that opens underneath her. They save her, but Lionblaze is worried the whole time about anyone running into evidence of Hollyleaf, something he isn't even willing to share with Dovepaw when she assumes from his behavior that it must have something to do with the prophecy. Boy, wouldn't it be great if these protagonists ever opened their speaking holes and used them to meow about their feelings? Also, as a side note, Bumblestripe hears that Dovepaw was the one to save Icecloud and is very impressed with her bravery. Ivypaw also did really well, and while Dovepaw didn't, Ivypaw points out that Firestar already knows how special Dovepaw is, so she really has nothing to worry about. Dovepaw wishes she could be judged like everyone else, and Ivypaw points out matter-of-factly that she's not like everyone else. Then they have a ceremony. Dovewing and Ivypool become warriors, with even Spiderleg vouching for the skills Dovepaw demonstrated, and because there are no more apprentices, Firestar announces that all the young warriors should take on apprentice duties for now. Lionblaze then takes a moment to remind us that his and Cinderpelt's relationship is tense now. Briarlight is still not getting better, and still feeling down about it, but is offering to teach Icecloud her exercises as she's healing. That said, it seems like Brightheart, rather than Briarlight, is the one doing most of the chores for Jayfeather at the moment. Jayfeather and Lionblaze explore the cave-in for signs of Hollyleaf, and find a tuft of black fur, but not the rest of her body. This must mean that Hollyleaf is somehow alive, or that she at least wandered further into the tunnels before dying. Briarlight, though still considering herself useless, helps to clean Jayfeather's fur, and the medicine cat enters his dreams looking for signs of fallen leaves or rock. He finds the latter and quickly asks if Rock knows anything about Hollyleaf. Rock instead replies that Jayfeather must go to the mountains where Rock was born. Okay, hang on. We heard before that Rock was one of the leaders of the Ancients' culture at the lake, and saw him again as the cat welcoming cats into the tunnels for their Sharp Claw assessment. All this happened before they left to go to the mountains. What do you mean you were born there, Rock? Anyway, Fallen Leaves comes in too and confirms with Jayfeather that the other ancients are all gone, and then they say goodbye. Jayfeather concludes that the prophecy comes from the tribe in the mountains and is determined to go and learn about it. Ivypool heads back to the Dark Forest. However, because she and Dovewing had their vigils, she got there at dawn when everyone else was leaving. She does run into Tigerheart, though, who is extremely unhappy with her after seeing her nearly kill Flametail. Thistleclaw then sets up Ivypool and Antpelt in a competition together, where Thistleclaw gets furious at Antpelt for not being as cruel as possible, and eventually leads him to run away. Ivypool is then left to face Thistleclaw alone, and wins, also winning Mableshade's approval. While Dovewing is on the way to the gathering, worrying over her sister's intensive injuries that she won't talk about, she spots Tigerheart, gets angry, and Bumblestripe comforts her. Also, Grasspelt asks them where Briarlight has been the last several moons, and Dovewing helps Bumblestripe out of the awkward conversation, along with his feelings about Briarlight. Tigerheart tries to ask Dovewing out again and warn her about Ivypool, but she isn't willing to listen and stalks off. Bumblestripe comes to talk to her, and Blossomfall tells Dovewing directly that Bumblestripe is clearly in love with her, though Dovewing can't believe that. Jayfeather demands that Firestar let him visit the tribe on some cats' orders because of the prophecy, and despite the vagueness, Firestar agrees, sending him with Dovewing, Foxleap, and Squirrelflight, who Jayfeather is far from happy to bring along. Yellowfang comes to him in a dream, says it's Mousebrain to leave ThunderClan alone right now, and leads him through StarClan. Notably, past cats from multiple clans, such as Crooked Star, for some reason, Flametail, who greets Jayfeather happily, and Ashfur, who is here in StarClan because, to quote Yellowfang, his only fault was to love too much. Jayfeather isn't giving up, though, says goodbye to Briarlight when he wakes up, and gathers his patrol to leave. Lionblaze, meanwhile, is left behind and upset about it. Cinderheart tries to comfort him, but does so by saying Jayfeather is special because of the prophecy, so he's not really in danger, and nor is Lionblaze. Cinderheart says she never knew who he really was before, because she didn't know about the prophecy. But now everything has changed. She wanted a mate and Kit so badly, but she simply can't have it. I don't buy it, but let's get to that later. Leafpool tells Lionblaze that Cinderheart really did and does love him, and that Leafpool misses being a medicine cat. Dovewing overhears Antpelt's death from the infected wounds Thistleclaw left him, but doesn't know exactly what's going on since Ivypool hasn't mentioned anything. However, as Dovewing gets further from the lake, she encounters a new problem. Severe overstimulation from all the brand new sights, sounds, and scents, particularly around the Two-Lake place where so much is happening at all times. Jayfeather helps to ground her, though, and she gets a handle on it soon enough. Ivypool is involved in a big group training session against Hawkfrost, involving Redwillow, Ratscar, Sunstrike, and Icewing as newer faces, along with Tigerheart and Breezepelt. Of course, the newest face of all is introduced by Brokenstar, Blossomfall, who has a hard time adjusting rapidly to the brutality of the Dark Forest. Also, Antpelt is here, for good, on account of his death. Dovewing and the others meet the tribe cats. They catch up with, or meet everyone, and everyone but Stoneteller is happy to have them visit. Stormfur also lets his friends know in passing that Stoneteller hasn't named a successor. They're usually chosen as kids and trained for their life, and that time is running out. Back in ThunderClan, Toadstep expresses a lot of admiration for Lionblaze, which is adorable, and he and Lionblaze end up being the keys to fighting off a dog together. I like these two. Briarlight also tried to leave camp and was endangered because of it, so they warn her to keep herself safe. After scaring Stormfur's kittens, Jayfeather speaks to Stoneteller about how he was told to come, with no other detail, and Stoneteller immediately says the tribe doesn't need their help. Jayfeather points out how Stoneteller hasn't chosen a successor, and hears about Stoneteller's lack of faith in their ancestors, in his tribe, or in himself. After the numerous tragedies they've suffered, and times they've been saved by the clans, he's convinced cats don't belong in the mountains at all. Rock appears, only to Jayfeather, to say they do belong here, and seems to imply that he was the first Stoneteller in these mountains before they went to the lake to become the Ancients, and before they came back again to become the tribe. Rock's backstory is getting more contradictory and complicated with every moment. A vision comes to Jayfeather of all the clans dying if the tribe does, and before he knows it, he is transported into the past, right in front of Halfmoon. Apparently Jay's wing disappeared before they set out on their journey, right when Jayfeather left, and everyone thought he was dead. Also, the Ancients are starving, exhausted, and cold, so they're already debating if coming here was in any way a good idea. Since Jayswing was the one to suggest and the last to vote on their journey here, it's now up to him, again, to convince the ancients to become the tribe. For the record, this is chapter 13 of 22. Dovewing then spends a chapter just living in and learning about the tribe. Back in the past, Jayfeather makes up a bad excuse for why he didn't travel with the ancients and begins to teach them to hunt in the mountains. He chides himself intentionally for thinking he, of all cats, can teach them to hunt, but questions who else would do it if he didn't. Yeah, this is kind of the whole problem, guys. We'll get back to this. Meanwhile, Ivypool is worried about Blossomfall since she's a newbie in the Dark Forest and decides to go hunting with her. While out, Blossomfall gets Ivypool to explore in the tunnel hole opened up at the beginning of the book. She makes a derisive comment about how the worst that could happen is they'd lose the use of their legs, and while exploring to find a way out, they spot paw prints and realize someone must be alive down here. Jayfeather and the ancients get caught in an avalanche, and everyone is starting to think the mountains will kill them all before they learn to live here. Jayfeather continues to promise that they have time and they need faith, but many cats want to return to the lake. While Jayfeather's losing hope, Halfmoon follows him into the caves that Stoneteller lives in and starts speaking very poetically about the moon, stones, and the meaning that can be drawn from them. She wishes that more cats had faith in Jayswing, and they end up sleeping next to each other that night. Jayfeather leads them in their first successful hunt, and Halfmoon brings up the topic of kits. Rock immediately cuts them off to remind Jayfeather that he can't be caught in the past because he is powerful and needs to save the present. Jayfeather, apparently, doesn't want to leave. Ivypool and Blossomfall are still in the tunnels, and lost at that. Then a rock falls, injuring Blossomfall's leg. At this point, Blossomfall asks in worry if Millie would miss her, and Ivypool promises she would. Ivypool does realize then, though, how Blossomfall was probably recruited by the Dark Forest. Like Ivypool with Dovewing, Blossomfall wanted to feel as worthwhile as her sibling. Blossomfall says she hates herself for being jealous of Briarlight for Millie's love, considering all Briarlight has been through, but she can't help being jealous, and that must mean she's just a bad cat. That's why she joined the Dark Forest. She's evil and belongs there. That's where the conversation ends, though, as Ivypool still wants them to escape, and with the help of a ginger and white Tom and some other dark-colored cat, they do. When they return, Whitewing is shocked and worried by how beat up Ivypool looks, but Millie at first ignores and then chastises Blossomfall instead, making an explicit comparison to how perfect and unlucky Briarlight is, and snarling at Blossomfall. It's safe to say that Blossomfall feels justified in being in the Dark Forest. In the Ancients' time, Rock tells Jayfeather that he needs to leave, and Halfmoon needs to become the first Stoneteller, but Jayfeather refuses to listen. Jayfeather then helps a queen have kits, something Jayswing probably couldn't do. One of the kits is named Lion's Roar, joining Jayswing and Dove's Wing in being the cats Jayfeather recognizes as the old lives of the three. Jayfeather then accepts that he has a role to play and tells Halfmoon about being Stoneteller. When she says she doesn't want to lead, he tells her to be their healer, which is, of course, the other name for Stoneteller. As much as I don't like the context here, this is one of my favorite single quotes in the series. He tells her they are now a tribe, and that he won't ever forget her, before he is swept back into the present. Lionblaze then has a chapter about training with other warriors. At the end, he asks Ivypool if there are any ThunderClan warriors training in the Dark Forest, and she decides not to answer. Boy, am I glad we had this great progress! Dovewing is out with the tribe cats again. Swoop is carried off by a hawk, and Foxleap blames himself since he suggested fighting it to protect the outsiders, and the tribe is more terrified than ever. Except for Stoneteller, who explicitly blames Foxleap and all the clan cats. Just then, Jayfeather walks in and says he'll take care of everything, and then they will leave. He demands that Stoneteller choose a successor, but he doesn't, and then he dies that night in his sleep. Jayfeather is visited by some tribe ancestors in his dreams, who tell him he must choose the next Stoneteller himself. After all, he appointed the first one. They also give him another prophecy. The end of the stars draws near. 3 must become 4 to challenge the darkness that lasts forever. But apparently, the 4th is already with them, so they don't have to search far. Jayfeather lets the tribe know that Stoneteller is dead, but lies and says he named a successor first. Crag, because he's someone old and experienced? Crag, now Stoneteller, accepts. The end. What, you thought the tribe was going through a wider conflict with the outsiders and death from regular dangers that couldn't just be solved by having a new leader with a less jaded attitude? Ridiculous! This book was odd. It was absolutely filler in the grand scheme of the arc, ignoring or stalling most of the arc's plots and even introducing 2 brand new and lengthy elements to further stall the story. Did you notice Flametail's death wasn't even given a passing notice and he's just doing fine in StarClan? A lot of the elements are also very frustrating, particularly with the hindsight and context of knowing where these stories go and don't go. However, I can't fully hate it because, at least for the first half, I got to live in and learn about a lively ThunderClan, which is honestly my favorite part about the series, and a large reason why I love Omen of the Stars so much. Everything from Spiderleg's shocking approval of Dovewing to Toadstep's admiration of Lionblaze to Dovewing's interest in watching the other clans' daily lives is great, and honestly, this book contains some of my favorite scenes in the arc. There are also a truckload of scenes that have a lot of potential and suspense in them, if only they were allowed to be integrated more fully into a wider story. Jayfeather being upset about Squirrelflight coming with him would have been great if they ever got to talk or resolve things in this book. Dovewing's overstimulation would have been great if it had continued for more than one scene. Lionblaze and Jayfeather finally discussing Hollyleaf for a single moment would have been great if they got to talk for the rest of the book, or if Hollyleaf even occupied either of their thoughts for the rest of the book. Blossomfall's feelings about herself, Briarlight, and Millie is actually more complicated, but the tunnel scene specifically could have been great if Blossomfall went on to change and develop as a result of this conversation, or her relationship with Ivypaw. The book is genuinely loaded with moments that have so much potential, and so little follow-through, because this book is trying to be so many things at once. Unlike Outcast, which was an entire book dedicated to visiting and saving the tribe, Sign of the Moon almost seems like it wasn't intended to be a tribe book at all. The actual tribe content only takes up about a third of the book, and is scurried through, with most of the content being entirely superfluous or repetitive in both the past and the present. Meanwhile, almost every clan chapter introduces at least one important plot beat or relationship that really should open up more stories if it ever went beyond a single chapter. So, knowing it's a disjointed book, let's look at some of the elements. Starting off badly, Lionblaze and Cinderheart. They're just having romance drama, and not even logical or compelling romance drama. Cinderheart thinks Lionblaze is special, and therefore she's not good enough for him, and she also blatantly and repeatedly considers his power and place in the prophecy to be a massive aspect to him, more important than anything else she knew about him. This doesn't feel like Cinderheart behavior, really, but if we assume it is, I don't think these two should get together. Lionblaze, who had consistent problems with overextending his strength, even being afraid of it, and who doesn't honestly spend much time thinking about the prophecy, shouldn't have a mate who sees him as nothing but a prophecy cat. Most of Lionblaze's chapters are filler and or repetitive and don't progress this relationship at all, but the book single-handedly convinced me that these two are a bad match. On to Ivypaw then, and this is very much where the cracks I've been alluding to in the past videos start to show. Ivypaw's stated job, her reason for continuing to go to the Dark Forest, is to spy on them, to learn information, and share it with the three so they can prepare. The Dark Forest is, since Night Whispers, blatantly evil and are actively training their cats for war each night, so the fact that they are planning a battle with the trainees on the clans is self-evident, and there's very little the clans can do to prepare for that except know that there is a battle coming. Unless the Dark Forest starts forming a more elaborate and specific plan, the most useful information Ivypaw could gather is who the trainees are, which she is learning more about. However, on this topic, when explicitly asked, and on any other information about the Dark Forest, Ivypaw stays completely silent for the whole book. Both Dovewing and Lionblaze try to reach out to her with specific or general questions, but Ivypaw is either too embarrassed or too protective to share anything at all, including information about Blossomfall's participation and Aunt Pelt's death. You are not acting as a spy, sweetie. This is not what a spy does. Dovewing is also, utterly inconsequential here. She has a couple of good scenes, particularly at the beginning, and it's clear that she doesn't like Tigerheart right now after he used her to kidnap her sister, but there isn't much development in either her plot or relationship. Since Ivypaw isn't talking to her, she has no other strong connections, and her time in the mountains leaves her with no lasting friendships. Even if it should at least make her closer to Foxleap. I don't say this lightly, but without significant additions to her story, I would count her chapters as being just as useless as Lionblaze's here. Let's turn then to a different trio of siblings, Briarlight, Bumblestripe, and Blossomfall. They get a section all to themselves because all of them have pieces of very important, to the fans, content that doesn't actually conclude within this book. Briarlight seems to have regressed, or just not grown, from her resolution in the last book, and is still feeling bad about the prospect of never fully healing. Notably, she's also not doing many chores in the medicine den, and instead, that extra work went to Brightheart. Bumblestripe appears to be falling for Dovewing, but there's nothing more to say on that yet. And Blossomfall... Okay, here's the complicated one. Blossomfall is now a Dark Forest trainee and parallel to Ivypool, because she considers herself a bad cat who belongs there for being jealous of Briarlight. She is jealous of Briarlight because Millie ignores her in favor of taking care of Briarlight. And because Blossomfall considers herself a bad cat, she has resigned herself to being in the Dark Forest, and justifies it more to herself when we see Millie being overtly cruel to her. There's a few things wrong here. First of all, Briarlight's arc with Millie's overprotection was concluded, at least as much as it's ever going to be, in the last book. If this conflict with Blossomfall happened in Night Whispers, I wouldn't have a problem. But now, Millie is supposed to be keeping her distance more, is supposed to have learned something about what Briarlight's status means to her, and definitely in no world should be this cruel to another of her kits. From everything we know about Millie's motivations, the prospect of Blossomfall also being injured should have sent Millie into another spiral over her kits being in danger. Millie's problem was with anyone she loved being in constant danger, not with Briarlight being the only fixture of her life. The other issue is on Blossomfall's side. Firstly, there's no reason why she should be mad at Briarlight instead of Millie, but even Blossomfall admits that's irrational, and you can make your own explanations for why her feelings ended up the way they did. There's also the issue that Blossomfall is an adult, with a father, brother, and clan around her who should be able to provide her with ample care, but if the issue is, as one single scene in this book demonstrates, Millie being cruel rather than just neglectful towards her, that might not be enough. However, if Blossomfall is resigning herself to being a bad cat and joining the Dark Forest rather than trying to change, then, as a lesson for the kids, and a parallel for what Ivypool should do, she needs to, by the end of this arc, realize she is wrong and work to improve herself, apologize to Briarlight if it feels appropriate, and come to understand what she can control and work to become. If this is, for example, the only time we touch on this element of Blossomfall's character, then she doesn't have a character arc. She had a character scene, and that scene showcased a negative aspect of her character and then justified it with no further examination. One other note before we move on. Between the black fur and the paw prints and the dark shape in the shadows and the mentions of her story, it's pretty clear at this point that Hollyleaf is alive. She's living in the tunnels, and from the last scene with Ivypool and Blossomfall, likely knows Fallen Leaves somehow. We'll have to see how that one pans out, because for right now, it's just a trail of breadcrumbs. It's time to turn to the only protagonist who seems to matter in this book. Sort of, if we count the out-of-nowhere side plot as mattering. Jayfeather is still determined to analyze and follow the prophecy, and if that means going to the tribe, and then to the ancients, and sorting out their problems to get him more answers, he'll do it, but he has no particular connection to the tribe except, well, if you count it, through Half Moon. Honestly, these two had more chemistry in Long Shadows, and even there it was not much. In the few chapters Jayfeather gets with the Ancients, he actually only gets to speak with Half Moon a handful of times, and shares only 2 encounters that could be deemed romantic. We still know almost nothing about Half Moon by the end of this, and what Jayfeather seems to love about her is just that she loves him and wants to share a pleasant, peaceful life with him and have kittens. This wasn't something Jayfeather expressed any interest in before, but as soon as Rock says he can't have it, he suddenly wants it a lot. Then he sees Lion's Roar be born and decides within a paragraph that, nope, Rock's right and I need to head back. I don't know anyone who really likes the relationship between Jayfeather and Half Moon without significant headcanons applied, and it's easy to see why. All of this has also been discounting what I still find to be the strangest aspect. Jayfeather never lets this woman know who he is. They added in the explicit reincarnation of the 3 from their ancient counterparts to their modern forms to make this more palatable, and unlike in Long Shadows, Jayfeather has no particular thoughts about Jayswing, except that he wouldn't have the healing capabilities Jayfeather does, but it's a fact that whoever Jayswing was, he's not the same cat with the same memories, interests, personality, or love as Jayfeather, and it therefore feels like a really uncomfortable lie for Jayfeather to continue accepting love from Half Moon without ever telling her that that he isn't who she thinks he is, and while in fact lying to cover how he disappeared before the journey. The other big problem with Half Moon is one that ties into the tribe section as a whole. Jayfeather once again is the deciding factor in 2 massive events in the tribe's past. After being the one to force the ancients into the mountains, he's also the one to force them to stay, teach them to hunt, and to appoint the first stone teller. Then, in modern times, he's the one to force the tribe to stay together despite stone teller's lack of faith, and then to lie to them in order to appoint another stone teller, Crag, who I could not tell you one thing about and who Jayfeather spent absolutely no time with. Modern Stone Teller, the character, is framed as being wrong, delusional, or pitiable for losing all his faith in the mountains and pouring hatred onto the clans for their involvement with his tribe. I don't like how he behaves and how he is constructed to be irrational for the sake of being an obstacle. However, at this point, he is also somewhat right. There is no reason the tribe belongs here or has to survive here. They've now, canonically, only done this because Jayfeather told them to multiple times over. And on the point of clan meddling, nearly every interaction the clans have ever had with the tribe has been them saving the poor, defenseless tribe cats from their horrible land, terrible dangers, and their silly misunderstandings of borders. No individual tribe cat has ever been treated like a person with their own agency and ability to solve problems. And yes, this includes Brook, whose only role is being the one who accepts Stormfur, who in turn helps the tribe with his clan ways. Jayfeather now also being the one to control both the past and present of the tribe's existence, techniques, and leadership cements it. The tribe is not treated as its own independent entity worthy of respect and dignity on its own merits. They are exclusively useful in connection to or as an experience for the clan cats. This has been a growing problem since Arc 2, but it continues to be maddening. Speaking of maddening, some of the last pages of this book introduced a brand new prophecy, commonly known in the fandom as the Fourth Cat Prophecy, since it is immediately and forever interpreted as showing that the 3 need to join with a 4th cat in order to win the battle against the Dark Forest. At this juncture, all I will say is that this really seems like a method of padding out time until the final battle can arrive. We have no idea who the 4th cat is yet, but if this is going to be a meaningful addition rather than just a filler plotline, the 4th cat has to be someone who would change the tide of battle, who wouldn't be fighting on the right side or with their full power if the 3 don't locate them, and ideally be someone who has a meaningful character connection to the 3 and or the Dark Forest, so that there can be a reason why their inclusion is more important than their superpowers. The 3 were all born with their powers already, remember? So if this 4th cat does have powers, they must be subtle or far away enough to not have been noticed even by Dovewing's eyes and ears. And whether or not they have powers, their particular skills still have to be enough to change the course of the battle with the Dark Forest. There's a lot riding on this, and, well, nearly everyone watching this will already know who the 4th cat is and that they do not live up to these standards. Sign of the Moon is a frustrating book. Everything it adds to the tribe lore is frustrating, the stagnation of both the characters and arc plot is frustrating, the final hour prophecy is frustrating, and the numerous scenes that require inclusion in a narrative to function, but are instead left as standalone chapters, are very frustrating. However, the most frustrating piece is that there are still many elements I like about this book. The characterization given to a wider body of clanmates, a few more and more notable faces being added to the Dark Forest, and boundless tons of potential around every corner consistently make me want to spend more time in and look more closely at this book, where I then have to be reminded of what its overall content is still like. This is my least favorite book of the arc so far, but not for lack of all good. It's just that the good it does have comes in small, solitary moments, and the parts the book asks you to focus on are often disheartening, if not uncomfortable. Thankfully, though, we don't need to stay in this space for long, because coming up next is one of the most popular super editions ever released, and one of my personal favorites as well. Join me next time as we head back into the past, though not the ancient past, when we return for the next episode of our trip through time.